to today's conversation. We are talking about retreats and sabbaticals, and we'll just get right onto it just so that we can be able to keep time. As you can see, my name is Major Retired Lucy L.W Mukuria, and I will be facilitating this particular session. So, karibuni sana. We shall want to understand the differences. Say again?
Just continue.
Did somebody say something? We want to be able to understand the differences and similarities between retreats and sabbaticals. We want to learn how to exploit the COVID-19 pandemic as a retreat for personal and professional acceleration, and we want to be able to teach someone else how to plan and execute a physical and or virtual retreat and sabbatical. So those are the objectives of this conversation, okay? So we go to the next slide. And of course, we are having the conversation of what a sabbatical is. And a sabbatical is a leave. A sabbatical leave is also known as a breather for law or a leave of absence. It is defined as a time period in which an employee does not report to his or her usual workstation, but still remains employed. And I think we see that a lot with archaeologists, with psychology professors, with people in the medical field, where they take time off to go and do something that is professionally related that will give them a personal fulfillment, but they are not doing it at the workstation, and they can always come back to where they are employed after an agreed time. And I think the most important thing to note about sabbatical leaves is that depending on the arrangements that you make with your employer when you are getting employed, and I think this is a conversation I would encourage. I would encourage everybody to be able to take part in when you're negotiating your terms. You at least be able to make sure if you're able to give your employer 5 years, you can be able to get perhaps half a year, or for every 3 years you work, you can be able to get about 3 months to 23 days where you can be able to go and engage in a professional or personal activity that will give you personal fulfillment, professional acceleration, but it's not work related. I think that's the point. And you also should be able to get paid, whether it's half of your salary or whether it's your salary minus a few things that have to do with where you're employed. It's a good thing to negotiate when you're getting employed, because the time that you take off actually helps you to regenerate in a way that when you come back to your employment, you can really be able to give a lot of yourself. So we come to retreats, and retreats can also be known as retirement, departure, withdrawal, seclusion, solitude, privacy, asylum, shelter, refuge, and recess. Okay, basically it means for you to withdraw. I like to think that at this particular time, we are all in a kind of a retreat, because we've been able to withdraw from our everyday and have come to this point in our lives where we have basically been asked to shelter in place, to take refuge, and we've taken a recess from our everyday activities. So in a sense, we are in a retreat. If it's not by definition, it's definitely by behavior. So what we are saying is that you can be able to do that usually to be able to take yourself away from an environment that is counterproductive, that is threatening, that is painful, or you want to be able to do it to re-energize yourself, to heal yourself, and of course, for the purposes of your safety and your health. And of course, in the academic setting, we're also saying that you take a retreat, yes, to be able to re-energize, but to also be able to help you to refocus yourself. So like I said, given that the presentation comes at a time of a global pandemic, we shall look into retreats, not just as an activity for academic benefits, but also as an opportunity for supposed to be personal growth, which shall have a worthy impact on your profession. Right, so what are the common features between retreats and sabbaticals? In both instances, you completely break away from your routine. And this means from the timings where you're supposed to wake up to what you engage in during the course of the day. It even affects your meal, to an extent, to even what you consume. When you go to a retreat or a sabbatical, there's an education that is shared, that is learned. So what we're saying is that there is a sort of a harvesting of collective wisdom, in as much as there's somebody who is directing the entire process. The time in daily practices is well structured. There's a difference between a holiday and a retreat. So a retreat is pretty much very well structured. Excuse me.
Oh, it's just buffering a little.
It's pretty well structured. Oh, it's buffering?
Yeah, just a little, but we can hear you now. Go on.
Oh, okay.
It happens.
You'll have to excuse me. I mean, it's because it didn't connect last minute and I had to get a bit creative. But don't worry, we are good. So in both sabbaticals and retreats, they are featured by focused practice. So you'll find that, for example, if it is an academic retreat, a writing retreat, a spiritual retreat, a religious retreat, a wellness retreat, there will be very focused practice that is meant to like really drill you on sabbatical or retreat. And of course, you're in close proximity with people who understand the subject matter best. And they're there to be able to guide you through the process. But I think one of the things that is not here, but I should mention, that is very critical about sabbaticals and retreats is that they are voluntary. So it's a kind of a space where you go in because there is something you're seeking for yourself. And therefore, you will not necessarily find that people are being made to do things or they are being forced. There's a lot of volunteerism in complying with the particular activities during a sabbatical or a retreat. So commonly, you have to move your location to the retreat. And what we're saying is that now, as we are in the of the pandemic, we can't be able to actually move physically or meet physically. And that's why we are now turning to technology to be able to actually hold
Agnes,
right?
please mute yourself. Agnes, mute yourself, Agnes.
Is it not possible for somebody?
Okay. All right. David, please mute Agnes. Thank you. All right.
Is it done?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. I apologize to everybody else. Right. So, hoping that we are together so far, I want to be able to get into the 10-step how-to plan and to host surviving COVID-19 pandemic retreats for a group or for you personally. I mean, this is something you can also apply if you're going to go physically. I'm just using the context now to once again just remind us that the fact that we're dealing with a pandemic doesn't mean that we stop everything, that everything comes to a standstill. we have to be able to see how we can transfer our skills and be able to pivot by leveraging on the internet, virtual technology resources that we have available to us. And I don't think there's a time in our history where we have had so many possibilities available to us. So please note, you can still prepare a retreat. So first you want to name your retreat. As I had mentioned earlier, there are many kinds of retreats: religious, spiritual, academic. There's weight loss, there is yoga, there is writing, there is, oh yes, there are also sex retreats. Moving along swiftly. Then you need to decide on the purpose of the retreat. Why am I bringing people together? What is the objective that I want to be able to meet that is going to satisfy their personal objectives that will, yes, necessarily feed onto their professional objectives. You'll find that most of the retreats that you go to, how they are structured, you just don't go to meet a singular objective. You don't go to learn this one thing and then just do that one thing. You will often find that when you go to retreats, especially, whatever practice you come out with, or whatever reason that had taken you there, whatever you come out of there with, is something that you now generally apply holistically to your life. So you have to be very intentional about what the purpose of the retreat is, so that it's even able to speak to the people that you want to be able to come for it. You want to outline the contents of the retreat. Of course, you want to be able to have the structure that I had talked about earlier. You want to have the subject expert matter individuals who are going to have. These retreats and especially retreats are so specific that you even have to factor in what you're going to feed people, because it's an experience. It's a very holistic experience. So you even have to factor in what activities people will take part in when they are not actually engaged in the purpose of the activity that brought them there in the first place. So you have to be able to have a structured extracurricular activity, and it goes as far as even planning what people should be able to do when they are alone, like in your alone time. You know, what are you supposed to be able to do? I've talked about subject matter experts. I've talked about the food, the timing, what you do in the morning, up to the time you sleep, what you sleep on, what you wear. Everything is specific. It's actually pretty militarized. So you have to also factor in the inclusion of, subject expert matter people. It's very critical. And then you have to decide on how many people you want at your retreat. And of course, the decision of how many people you want is, we will determine a lot of things, from the space you require, from the people you need to come and support your program. And I'm not just talking about the subject matter experts, but I'm talking about the other people, for example, to provide security. I'm talking about people to keep the place clean if you don't plan for the people coming for the retreat or sabbatical to do it. I'm talking about the people to cook, the kind of resources that you require for the number of people you require. And of course, during this time, you don't have to worry about the physical part of it. But of course, if you're doing it virtually, you also need to consider the number, because depending on which platform you are for these purposes, most of them are talking about a limit of 100 people. Others are talking about 250 people. So you have to be able to know and decide how many people you want to come. And it also depends on where you want to advertise. You might say, I'm just going to let my 250 friends know that this is what I'm doing. So you don't have to be able to market it by putting it on social media. You don't have to, get even somebody in marketing to help you sell the retreat for it. So numbers are important, because again, it will help you to determine how much money people are going to pay. All right, so you also need to compile an itemized breakdown of the nature of the people you want to attend, okay? You need to choose a time span for your retreat. And what I know about retreats is that people plan them like an annual program, depending on the weather, depending on the school schedule. Like you have to be able to hold a lot of ideas in your head to be able to understand what time works best for people. Because if you're looking to get parents to get on it, or teenagers, you know, or young adults, then you need to consider the school calendar. You need to be able to consider when schools go on recess and those kind of things. So you need to choose a location. Of course, now we are talking about virtual retreats. You can essentially do it from anywhere. Even like I said, in your house, you can be able to do it. You can do it in a garden. But of course, when now you're not doing it virtually, the location is important, because you also want to choose a place that has the kind of weather that will support the overall objective of what you want to be able to achieve. You want a place that provides all the things that you require, be it security, be it availability of water. Yeah, I have to talk about this. You people know about our situation. I have to talk about, you know, electricity supply, the condition of the roads, the kind of roads that are there. Those are all considerations to be able to make while you choose the location. Then you have to now price your retreat. After you have taken care of all the overhead expenses, the operational expenses, you have to be able to sit down and also calculate how much the taxman is getting, so that you can be able to come with a single unit price of your retreat that if you're able to charge, then you actually are able to break even and perhaps make a profit. Then you want to commit a date and a time for hosting your retreat in your announcement. Like I said, it depends on what the objective is and what the people are. So your announcement can go on a varied number of platforms. You know, like if I'm doing a wellness retreat, I think that would have a wider platform than if, for example, I was doing a retreat for psychologists of the Kenya Psychological Association. Then the Kenya Psychological Association members are the only people I would actually notify. I think we are together in as far as that is concerned. Right. So what are the shared benefits of retreats and sabbaticals? Why should you go for one? Why should you create one? And why should they actually exist? Again, like I had mentioned earlier, there's a holistic rewarding in going for sabbaticals and retreats, because it gives you an opportunity to break your everyday monotony, and you are able to, like, you know, destabilize a lot of routine. And of course, there's never been anything wrong with destabilizing routine. It's very critical. How else do you discover something new? One is refreshed, rejuvenated, re-energized, re-empowered in the life of both the personal and professional. It's an experience of deep relaxation and inner peace. It is a remarkable shift in perception with a beneficial perspective. What maybe sometimes would have been a very difficult situation for you to be in, a situation that, like I said before, was either threatening, whether it was psychological, whether it was real, whether it was perceived, then you are able to now shift your perspective. And we are saying that these spaces provide sacred space and spiritual connection. Again, because you will rarely find a retreat that is necessarily with one person. There are those retreats, like they're called silent retreats. You have people there for like 30 days, but nobody says a word to each other. But that doesn't mean that there is no connection. I think that is very important to understand. And it is also an aid to recovery from pain, from illness, and from suffering. And it is also therapeutic. And here we are not just talking about psychologically, we are talking about just an overall healing that is holistic. And of course, because you are in a place that has people from all sorts of backgrounds, you are in a place that has subject matter experts, there is able to be an adoption of transferable skills. You come out of there having learned a thing or two, and most importantly, you taught somebody else a thing or two. And I think that's very critical in this. So it all sounds wonderful. It sounds lovely. It sounds doable. I think, you know, some of you are even thinking, when am I going to go and, you know, get into a retreat or get one together. So what could go wrong, and how would you work around it? Okay. This is basically on the issue of what could possibly go wrong if you are creating one or if you are in one, for example. Because one thing, like I told you about retreats, because you voluntarily come there, there's a lot more instruction than there is spoon feeding, if I may say so myself. So you can be able to say, and I see it all the time with the Journal Club. I see it all the time where there's this session that is called Shut Up and Write. And, you know, you're supposed to basically retreat from everything else and shut up and write. But you find that people suffer from procrastination, where you keep being asked, where is your thesis? We've not seen your thesis. People were like, you are supposed to mark this exam. You are supposed to prepare this exam. You are supposed to prepare for this exam. People are not doing it. So people say, talk about procrastination. They talk about not being in the feeling. People talk about writer's block, and people talk about boredom. So probably I wanted us to start from the bottom, and I want to begin by saying that being able to put these things into context is important. But are you feeling me? This is the question. Are you feeling me when I talk about procrastination? When I talk about not being in the feeling, writer's block, boredom, are you people with me about this? That you can know what to do, you just never get around to doing it. Or are people muted? Okay, people are muted.
Yeah,
so I guess
people are muted, but I guess participants who would like to say something, you can put up your hand or just unmute yourself, and this is supposed to be interactive.
Right, exactly. I think it's that's critical.
Yeah. So who wants to comment? Anyone? I don't see any hands raised on the Zoom. I hope we know how to raise our hands.
I'm looking at my...
Okay. Maybe no one has a comment. I don't know.
So I think everybody heard me. The question I was asking is whether you can relate to what I'm saying about procrastination, boredom. Okay, I see something here.
Macreen is texting. Yeah, Diana Mukuria says, I'm dealing with boredom.
Okay, feeling you kabisa. And procrastination. Okay, great, wonderful. Yeah, I'm tilting my head because I
would like to say something.
Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Jamal.
Hi, Jamal.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, you've talked a lot of things about, but does it our
Jamal, go ahead.
Yeah. Edwin, please mute yourself. Edwin. Sorry, Jamal. Proceed, Jamal. Did we lose Jamal? Jamal, Oh, he muted himself. Jamal muted himself. I was telling Edwin to mute. Sorry. Jamal, please unmute yourself. Or host, can you unmute Jamal?
Yeah, let me try.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just unmute him. I think he had wrongly. I was telling Edwin, not him. Sorry. Jamal?
Is he
It's not
here?
working on my side.
Sorry,
no,
I
you
can
can
hear
only.
Jamal.
No, that's David. So I'm telling Jamal to unmute himself.
I think I'm unable to unmute him from my side.
Yeah, you can, David. You can only send him a prompt. Then he should
Okay.
accept to unmute himself. Yeah. So if you sent him the prompt, that's okay. He will unmute himself.
Okay.
Ronald has his hand up.
Oh, good. Edmund, Rono. Unmute yourself,
Okay.
Edmund.
Okay, I'm seeing Shakur Ndolo says that in most cases, the factors are intertwined, not in the feeling, somehow bored. Well, I will do it tomorrow, procrastination. Okay, yeah. Wait, what did it say about horsemen and apocalypse? Hey, you guys, are we talking about? Okay, hang on. Let me just have a look at this. These are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Oh, procrastination, not being in the feeling, writer's block, and boredom. Yeah. I feel you. Oh, yes, indeed. Okay, what do you do when you take a sabbatical, say to write a book, and you get a writer's block, and maybe you have a full 6 months? This is a really good question. Gosh. Thank you, Florence. I'll talk about that in a bit. The cases are intertwined. I'm dealing with boredom. Thanks, Dee. McCrane, I'm feeling you on procrastination. Okay. Right. So I suggest we just go on with what we have. Oh, finally, my thing is here. Thanks, City. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just judged. Okay. Put it. So I think I feel like we have sort of criminalized boredom, or we've associated it with something very negative. And a lot of people don't seem to recognize that boredom is actually an emotion. I feel like my teeth are on the camera. So we don't seem to recognize that boredom is an emotion. And I really wanted to talk about this boredom issue because if we find that something is boring, then I don't know, somehow that translates to us being boring or judging other people as boring. And what we need to understand is, first of all, even just the word boring, it comes from, boring, where you have a repetitive activity that is not pleasurable, that is repetitive, that doesn't give you any pleasure, that doesn't have any meaning, that doesn't challenge you. That is what boredom is. And I think it's important to break it down like that, so that when you find yourself feeling bored, you say to yourself, whatever it is I'm doing right now is repetitive, it's boring, it doesn't challenge me, I literally don't need it in my life. So it could also be that you're literally just seated, feeling bored. That in itself should be something to actually give you that, that bell, like boredom is an emotion. And as we know of all emotions, you know, like joy, like sadness, like anger, if it reaches a point where you're concerned, you have to ask the insightful questions. You have to be able to ask, why is this activity boring to me? What can I be able to do to find to find meaning for myself, to find I am being productive, to find that I am engaged? So it could mean changing how you do that particular activity, or it could mean changing that activity altogether. And I think we recognize this in things that sometimes we say, oh, you know, back then I used to do this. Nowadays, I find it so boring, you know? Like for me, the best example I can use is when I was an undergraduate. And then I started graduate school, and I used to look at what undergraduates are doing. It was the same thing I was doing, but you wouldn't find me dead doing it because it would not give me any pleasure. I would get bored. So we have to put boredom in the context of the several things that I've talked about to be able to understand whether it's how we do it that we need to change, or we need to change the activity altogether, to abandon that activity and pick up another one, or actually make a hybrid of the activity that we have. And I guess it's easier said than done, because if, for example, you're bored with your job, you see what I'm saying? If you're bored in your marriage, you know, if you're bored in your relationship, if you're bored in, you know, personal and professional spaces, then that is something you definitely need to examine. And it's important to examine it from the point of view that it's an emotion, because what happens, and I think we see it a lot with teenagers, is that when you continuously allow the boredom to continue, it develops into something else. You know, you had me earlier talk about, yes, boredom can stimulate your creativity. However, we need to look out for the type of boredom that makes you not to do anything. Okay, I'll talk about not doing anything, because, you know, sometimes doing nothing is also an activity. If that makes sense. Doing nothing is also an activity. Because remember, boring is boring, like BORING. Yani, could drill to monotony. So sometimes if you do nothing, that doesn't mean that's boring. Boring has certain characteristics. The characteristics that I talked about, that it doesn't give you any kind of pleasure, that it is repetitive, that it doesn't challenge you to like bring out your skills, your gifts, your creativity, and your talents. That is boring. So not doing anything is not boredom. Please know the difference between those two things. Because remember, before you are able to make, for example, any movement, the critical step about making movement is actually a stop. You get? That is very critical. So doing nothing and boredom are two different things, two different things. So I was talking about why we need to really keep an eye on boredom, especially for our teenagers and also for ourselves, is that if you don't address it, it quickly deteriorates to mild depression. You'll find I have nothing to do, nothing engages me, nothing excites me, nothing does anything for me, you know. So it's important to be able to address it. And the crazy thing is that when now we are talking about clinical depression, people confuse it with boredom. So you'll find somebody is clinically depressed, and that's when you find now people saying to the person, why don't you do a puzzle? Why don't you go visit your friend? Why don't you? So we need to differentiate that there's a difference between clinical depression and boredom. And you cannot be able to wish away clinical depression, as we know. But you definitely can be able to pour into boredom and be able to bring something out of it. So I hope that's clear. Let's talk about procrastination. Of course, procrastination is when, you know, I'm supposed to, somebody even said it here, I'm supposed to be writing a paper, or I'm supposed to be writing a book. And what do you do when you take a sabbatical to say write a book, and you get a writer's block, and maybe you have a full 6 months? Wow, that's a heavy statement, I must say, because yeah, writer's block for 6 months, it's totally possible. I mean, for boredom, procrastination, writer's block, not being in the feeling, one thing I want to be able to say about all these things, yes, they are, it's a space you are in your mind. You have to be able to recognize that first. It's a space you are in your mind. So for procrastination, you will be avoiding to do that thing in lieu of another. So of course, the question here, the insightful question here is, why am I avoiding to do what I'm supposed to do? And of course, we avoid to do things if they are painful to us or they threaten us in a sort of way that is either real or imagined. So you want to be able to to ask yourself, what threat is this thing that I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not doing? What threat is it posing that is making me avoid it? And it seems like a very abstract idea, but especially for people who are able to translate what they are doing into how far it can go, how many people it can influence, you'll find that, oh my gosh, if I write this book, I get published, my life will change. Then now I have to be on a certain career path that will take me, for example, to be a professor, or it will take me to go market the book, or it will take me to meet certain people, or it will give me certain responsibilities. And no, me, I'm not that kind of a person. So you might find that you're avoiding to do something, not because it's an immediate threat, but because of the potential that it holds. And probably you feel, you know, people also have that imposter syndrome, like, but no, me, write a book, I can't do that. No, no, I'm not good enough. Nobody will read it. I shouldn't bother. So you find yourself skirting around the issue, and doing other things. So procrastination is also not a terribly bad thing. Yeah. If you're aware that you're procrastinating, you can actually be processing like based on what I've talked about. But in the meantime, you can engage in productive procrastination. You get, like, there are people who are like, okay, fine, I know I'm supposed to write this book. I don't know why I'm not feeling it. And then you decide, instead, I'm just going to go to the pub and drink and meditate on this issue. And you do that for the next 6 months. I think it's safe to say by the end of the 6 months, you've spent too much money on alcohol, and you have not helped your body in any way. Not that I'm judging alcohol. I'm just saying that probably it's not a very productive procrastination. Sometimes when you are avoiding to do something and you don't understand why you're not in the feeling and all those things, you can engage in productive or positive procrastination. Like, you can go play. And I really want to highlight play, because one of the few things about procrastination is that it arrests your mind in a very, you're enslaved essentially, and you have this repetitive thinking, you have these repetitive thoughts, and they're not really taking you anywhere. You're just going round and round in your circles, and you're a prisoner in your own mind. But one of the few things that I like are play. There's something about play that when you're playing, you don't have to necessarily go like, okay, you don't have to, your mind doesn't have to tell your leg, okay, move this way, tell your hand. You know, there's a certain ease on it. Perfectionist procrastination, plenty of time procrastination, fun procrastination, anxious procrastination. Does boredom mean doing the same thing continuously? Yes, boredom does mean doing the same thing continuously, but that which does not give you any pleasure, that which you don't derive any meaning, that which does not bring any progress. Okay. So I'm reading there, fun procrastination, plenty of time procrastination, and perfectionist procrastination. Yeah, there are people who will be having plenty of time procrastination. And I'll give you the common one with us Kenyans. Wacha hii corona ishe, tutakutana. I'm like, wait, but that's what you told me in December. You said, wacha hii mwaka ishe, tutakutana. So plenty of time procrastination is something that is very, very common. But like I said, when you are the one suffering that procrastination, it's important that you're able to engage in the productive procrastination. And one of the few things I talked about is play. If you want to be able to come back and look at what you're doing afresh with a new visor, with the revitalized attitude, I really recommend play. I recommend a workouts. I even recommend laundry. I am so serious. There's something about, washing clothes, washing dishes, cleaning, that is very useful. And of course, for those of us who are have been able to learn how to meditate, this is also something very important, because in meditation, you basically disengage yourself from your body, you disengage yourself from your mind, and therefore you take a retreat from the repetitive thoughts, and you take a retreat from the threatening thoughts, feelings that you may be having about what you're doing. And you're able to actually come with a very refined and refreshed perspective once you've come out of it. So I just want to look up and see if there's any other comments before I go on. Yes, boredom can stimulate. Okay, so I already read that. So I see there are no other comments, and I want to be able to go to the next slide. Wait, why hasn't it, has it turned on your side? How come it's not turned on my phone? Okay, there we are. Yeah. Right, so one of the activities we're talking about, so this is about the second last slide. And of course, after talking so much about virtual retreats, now that we can't be able to do physical retreats, is, what is going on. And one of the activities is virtual retreats for healthcare workers. We are at a time where, healthcare workers are dealing with a lot. And, let's keep it on the real. We're on a day-to-day basis, even when there's no pandemic, very few organizations have programs where they get their frontline healthcare workers, or just healthcare workers in general, or even the support staff. They rarely get them to come in and essentially process out everything that comes with being on the front line of seeing death and suffering and disease and pain. So this month being Mental Health Month, we have a virtual retreat that we are putting together as True North. We're also having a psychologist's happy hour. You guys, we're going to have a happy hour. Like, you have to really, really get ready for it. You have to dress up. But it will be a dry virtual psychologist's happy hour. But I know some of you will sneak drinks. It's fine. Nitajua too. I'll see how your eyes will change. And then, of course, we are going to have a virtual retreat for self-care for everyday people, because I think it's safe to say that we have spent so much of our time outside of our homes, outside of our families, because we are working, we're going for meetings, we are going out, we are doing, we were busy. But I think from everything we've seen on the news, and also what we know in our hearts and in our own houses, we don't seem to know. We dress up to go out. We dress up because we're going out. Some people even brush their teeth because they're going out, Some people don't know how to be able to feel good about themselves if they're not going outside to meet with their co-workers or their friends or their colleagues or their family. People don't know how to be with themselves. There's this need for a constant stimulation of external factors, that surround us. But now that we have to be in this closed space, how can we be able to get out ahead at the end of this pandemic period, when we are able to, come out healthy, because I think this is common in every household. People are eating a lot. For some people, they're drinking a lot. So there could be other vices that would come out of it. So of course, we're talking about how can you best take care of yourself? How can you best take care of your children? How can you best take care of your household so that you're able to thrive when this is over, you know, because the world has not come to a stop. Like, look outside, the sun is still rising, it's still setting. So yeah. So I am happy to be able to support anyone who would like to conduct a virtual retreat. And I think this is a good point to note that last year when I was given this topic, I remember saying to myself, does Joyce know something about me that I don't know? Because I had done some training on, yeah, it's true, because I had done some training on retreats, and part of it was virtual retreats, because of course, you know, the work that I do, I want to create an environment where people can be able to, you know, come out not the way they came in. So when Joyce picked me for this, I was like, I didn't tell her this. How come she knows? I haven't told anybody about this. And amazingly, it falls at a time in May when we have this pandemic going on. So it has been my utmost pleasure to bring to you guys what I learned, what I've done, and what I am excited about doing. And I can tell you, me, I'm thriving. You know, like absolutely. So just know that you don't have to be a victim or a slave of this pandemic. You literally can decide how to be able to deal with it. You really can make that decision by yourself. It all depends on, you know, your decision-making ability by understanding how you need to be able to, you know, be your own best cheering team. So thank you. I've come to the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
I have a comment. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was so looking forward to this, and I want to be on that retreat. You've called it happy hour or what? I mean, I want the retreats also. So I really appreciate you've drawn on your vast experience in the military world, and you're really good with deployment logistics. I really got, like, I was following you. I could almost create mine now in my head as you were explaining. So, I joined a little late, but I know you even gave us the difference between retreat, sabbatical, you know, all these. For me, I call them forms of hibernation. For me, my biggest challenge is the zoning in. So I do have a space where I can actually sit very quietly, but zoning in without the distractions. So somebody also asked on the chat, how would, if you've dealt with all these strategies for boredom and the boredom is still there, what else is possible? So I guess I'm with her on that question, like zoning in and not being distracted as I'm on the retreat, like really, really going into that space. So maybe you could comment on that.
Okay, cool. I think the first thing, okay, can you guys hear me? It says my internet connection is unstable. Not now.
We can hear.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, oh, great. Oh, great. Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh. I thought nobody was hearing me. Right. So the thing that, I mean, I will tell you what works for me, right? I like to approach my work in a very chill, laid back, peaceful, to feel like I'm light. I like to feel like I'm coming to it without knowing anything, but knowing everything, and knowing that I'll do what I'm supposed to do for as long as I'm supposed to do it. I don't know if that makes sense. So you have to be able to have a preparatory activity. I'm telling you what works for me, you know? So for me, I want to be able to have meditated for myself. That's what works. And I'm not talking about this thing at you levitate, at you do what, It's really this simple. If I teach nothing today, let me just teach grounding and focusing and just like refreshing yourself. It's really simple. You have to put yourself in a position where you just sit comfortably. You have to close your eyes. And I'm closing my eyes just for dramatic purposes. So anyway, you have to close your eyes. Then when you close your eyes, there's a way when we close our eyes, people find that they've shut themselves in. And so if you sometimes look, you see the people's going left, right, like, no. The way you can actually be able to focus yourself is to look here, is to aim for here. So when you do that, you find that at least your eyes, your head feels relaxed. Then you need to just start listening to your breathing. Like you have to move your attention to your breathing. Okay? It's a very simple technique. And before you know it, and you won't even know when it happens, but you will have tuned out everything else that you might be aware of it, but it won't be what you're giving your attention to. So just, you close your eyes and you start listening to your breathing. You listen how you're breathing in, you listen how you're breathing out, you listen how you're breathing in, like that. You don't even have to count. Because I'm telling you, when you're ready, you will know. And then you just open your eyes, and whether you're sitting at your desk, whether you are sitting on your computer, whether you're starting to cook, whether you're starting to give a presentation, whether you're going in for a disciplinary hearing. The whole idea is that you're able to be grounded. So the question here is, how do I get in the zone? And that is one of the few things that I can tell you can get you in the zone. Of course, there are other techniques, relaxation, full body relaxation techniques that people can be able to get into. There is visualization practices that you can be able to apply that will be able to help you. And there are all these other activities that you can actually be able to do with your eyes open. Basically just focused activities that will help bring you in the zone. So I hope I've answered your question, Joyce, have I?
Yes, thank you so much.
Super. And then now you know what this means. This means you have to try it, and then you have to let me know if you got in the zone.
Okay, I will. I always forget breathing. Thank you for that reminder, mindfulness breathing, listening to my, thank you.
How can you forget breathing? How can
Yeah, thank you. That was
okay. So, yeah, so you could try that as well. Anybody else?
I'm seeing so many questions on the chat, and we have like 4 minutes. So I don't know which ones on the chat you want to tackle.
Oh, let me see.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a question about black magic. How do you deal with boredom brought about by another? Say you're writing a paper, project, thesis, then when you're in chapter 3, you are asked to change your research objectives. Okay. I fight procrastination by having somebody hold me accountable. What happens when you do all this, but you continue only for a short while, then you are back to being bored? Then, okay, hang on, people. So, is there any connection between managing psychological status and black magic? Though a bit late, I'd like to know the difference between the 4 types of procrastination. Okay, right. Is there a connection between managing psychological status and black magic? I mean, anything is possible. It depends on what your background is. It depends on what you believe. All those things come into play. Whether you believe something because it is true or you believe it, of course, it will affect your psychological status. And the power that you are able to use to affect your psychological status negatively, you have the same ability to affect your psychological status positively. I think that's what I can say about that. So what do you do boredom brought on by another? This sounds like boredom used in the context of this. It sounds like you're not having you're not in sync with your what are they called? With the person supervising you to write your thesis. Probably this is more about negotiation skills than anything else. But of course, if somebody is making you have to do the same thing differently, repetitively, it's not pleasurable, you don't feel like you're making progress, you can understand it's not that person who is bringing the boredom. I mean, it's the activity that you need to do. So like I said before, you need to see whether you can be able to change how you do the activity, or you do another activity that does not bring you the situation of that, the feeling of being bored. Like I said, boredom is an emotion. I hope I've answered that question. Then there was a question about what do I do if I keep for a short while, then I do that. Well, the first thing you need to realize that you can't constantly be motivated. You can't constantly be on a high, and that's why I was saying there's a big difference between doing nothing and being bored. Because you have to be able to understand that all motion is precipitated by rest. So you must also give yourself permission to rest so that you're able to come back to what you're doing and continue doing it. But you cannot put yourself in a position where you're continuously doing something, right? That is what is called boring, where you do the same thing repetitively at the same time and everything. So it means if you do it for a short while and then you feel differently about it, what the situation is telling you is that it's time to take a break. That's all the situation is telling you. So learn to take a break. I know we don't know how to take breaks here. We always think, ipesa ilali, I gotta make me some money, I have to secure, I don't know what, but in time you get to realize that your breath is your most powerful tool. It's all you really need to do everything, and you have time to do what you need to do without necessarily procrastinating. And you continue being bored for a short while. I find procrastination, okay, accountable. That is also good. It will work after that one. All right, so I think on the last question, we shall be able to have this presentation will be shared. You'll be able to have that question answered. Is there anybody else with another question? Dum, 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 dum. Hello?
Hello, I'm wondering if there's any other hand. I can't see any other hand. So I think I will assume we're all, this was very interactive. This was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. It was lovely to sit at your feet and learn, Major. I'm sure members, we all agree that this was really good. I see Macreen saying, thanks, Major. Jackie saying, thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. So we want more. So this things you've announced, we shall revisit. I'll say chat to you for sure. I definitely want to go on a retreat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. And we shall do this. We are coming out of this thriving, and even as it goes on, we are going to be productive. We are still going to be very positive, and we're going to spread that positivity around, and we're just going to keep it real.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Aurelia, do you want to say anything? Aurelia? All right. I don't know if can you hear me back? Okay. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. And tomorrow we join another Zoom call just like this. Karibuni sana. People are still saying thank you. Thank you, Lucy and Data Africa. That's Ndolo. Roosevelt Nguku is saying thanks a million, Lucy.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for showing up. I thank you for everybody who tuned in. And thank you to Joyce and your team for putting this together. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you, David. Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
can we take a photo of everybody? Is it possible?
That's a good idea. Can we do selfies or how will we do the photo?
No. There's a way it is done. Now. Where is this participant?
I have no.
Okay. Oh my God.
Who knows about taking a photo? I would love to.
I see you. Say hi to everybody. Roosevelt.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, if you could guide us, I
Awesome.
thought we were taking selfies.
So
Okay.
I'll stop now. Oh, here it is. Wait, I have it on my thingy. I just don't know. Oh, thanks everyone. I can now see you all. Thank you so much for us.
Yeah, you guys. Take a screenshot. Is it a screenshot?
I know. I don't know how to take a screenshot with my laptop. Can somebody tell me?
Okay, maybe I'll take one thing.
Is it where you put everyone on the full screen, David?
Pardon?
Could you put everyone on the? Could you put the screen format for all the faces being seen at once?
You can do it. You can do it
Let
for
me try.
yourself. Yeah, please try. Okay, so I have it on my laptop on my screen. I just don't know how to take a selfie.
That is our
so
assignment.
My daughter is coming to help me.
Oh, nice. That's our assignment before our retreat. We will learn how to do that.
Okay, I think, okay.
Okay, that's yeah, people are still saying thank you. Macrin is saying my son Owen. Macrin's son says hi. Owen is saying hello to you. Owen, the son of
is here. Yeah, my
wonderful. Hi. Say hi to us. Hi. Teach us how to take a photo on Zoom.
She's wearing a towel. That's why I wouldn't allow her to
I've managed, but I can't see everyone.
Well,
well, of course people are leaving, but you take the ones who are there.
Why can't you see everyone? Wait, let me.
People are leaving the call, but the ones who are there. So everybody should
gallery view.
Yes.
Go to gallery view. Up there, go to gallery view.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that.
Can we all unmute our videos if we don't mind?
Yeah.
If you are not in a channel like our good friend here.
Look at me, I'm smiling.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny. So,
yeah,
good.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
we
That's nice.
Videos. Okay, now we take the photo. All right. So, David, are you the one screenshotting or are you the one taking the photo?
Okay, I'll screenshot.
Yes, please screenshot. We've put our videos on.
I think there are people joining. Let them finish first.
Oh, nice. There's still people joining. Oh, my goodness.
1, 2, 3,
Okay. This should have gone on for 2 hours.
Okay, I'm taking one now.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
Mental Health Month.
Yes.
Cheers.
Yes.
Everyone say cheers.
Yeah, I took one.
Oh, good. Thank
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I've learned
Yes.
Thank
something.
you, everybody. Lenny, Pauline, McCrane, Joyce, Roosevelt, Ndolo, Karanja, Kenneth, Galaxy, Lynette, Ada, Mobile, Kwamboka, Molly, Hamisi. Oh my gosh, you guys. Oh, here you are, Mokiri. Thank you. Karenju. Such a nice name. Rono. Thank you so much, guys. Look out for the invitation for the virtual retreats, and we shall speak soon. Follow True North to just basically know what's going on Facebook, on IG, and on Twitter. Good night, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay. Good night. Okay. So David, save the chat so we can have people's names.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, David.
You are
What happens?
welcome.
You'll send it.
Always welcome.
Will you send it, or how does it work, Joyce?
Yes, you'll get the recording of the video. Definitely. Even for those who couldn't, they'll get to see it. Yeah.